In a world where quality business information is needed, we bring you On the Mic with Mike, the leading social enterprise business show in RVA. Join Mike King, the partnership guru, as he delivers game changers in Metro RVA. On the Mic with Mike showcases how business can help make society better. He discusses tech, culture, innovation, best business practices, and highlighting area nonprofits. Join Mike Monday through Friday, because it is the place where the best and brightest come to chat.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to On the Mic with Mike, the premier business radio program around. I'm your host, Mike King, and I appreciate you being here with me. The views expressed here are mine. Have no connection to, support, of agreement with any other host, information, ads on the station. I don't work for the station. My program just airs here on a daily basis, and I'm grateful for that. Join me as our cutting edge show. We uplift the community and showcase RVA in a different way. The sounds you're listening to are emanating from the Mike King Biz Studio, which is the global epicenter of social enterprise business. We'd like to thank our show sponsors, Tom Childry, the credit card guy. If you have credit card merchant issues, Tom Childry is the man. He can help you. Also, Andy Taylor and Junk Luggers. If you have things around the household that you need removed, give Andy Taylor a call. That's hot tubs, bikes, anything like that. If you have people around the household that you need removed, don't call Andy Taylor. He cannot help you remove people. He can help you remove stuff. So, and also Mama Michelle's Cafe, the best cafe, Southside Richmond. Make sure you go check her out. I tell folks, this is the best radio program around. We get the best and the brightest today. We have my man, Dr. Robert Winn, with us. Massey Cantor, welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you for having me.
All righty, sir. As I'd said, I'd seen you over at the Cattle Barons Ball. Let's talk a little bit about your journey, the medical field. We're in a different time now as far as medical research goes. A lot of questions regarding medicine as a whole. Let's start at your journey, then we'll touch on what's happening over at Massey.
Yeah, I think my journey is an interesting one. It may be a little bit different than most people. I didn't grow up wanting to be a physician, and certainly didn't want to grow up being a scientist. When I was growing up at 10 years old, 11 years old, I think my dream was to be the youngest foreman at GM because one, they made money and they had great cars. So luckily that didn't work out for me.
That is true.
So I think that my story is one in which people saw something in me before I saw it in myself. I actually think that goes along with one of my missions is to make sure that we are looking for the next generation of talent. They may not always see that they're scientists and doctors, but sometimes we can see things in our young people before they see it in themselves. And so we've been really trying to make sure at Massey and all my career that we have pipeline programs, particularly for our young folk, to make sure that they can actually have an opportunity to understand that maybe STEM sciences or research or even becoming a doctor is a possibility, not just some sort of aspirational dream.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have Dr. Winn, who's with us with Massey Cancer. So somebody saw the light in the young Robert Winn. At what point did you realize that I may be able to do this thing because they saw something in you maybe before you saw it? When was it that you realized I might have something here?
Yeah, it probably wasn't until I was in medical school that I actually recognized that. In fact, the story is Father Walter and Father Austin, both my counselors at Notre Dame, were the ones who put me aside and said, listen, I think you can be a doctor. And I remember sort of saying to them, particularly to Father Austin, I think you're crazy. And so I said, but I'll do it because you guys clearly believe in something. And so by the time I got probably into my junior year, it was clear as an undergraduate that I could probably do this thing. And by the time I got into Michigan Med School, it was clear that I could do this thing. And so then I never looked back.
All right. So right now we're at a difficult time now as far as people questioning medicine and research and all those things. Until COVID, I don't know if research has ever really taken a forefront and gotten the notoriety that it's gotten right now. You were in the front lines of that. Can you talk a little bit about the process that people see? Because lay people, we just see something, it pops up. We don't realize all the research, whether it's research facilities and all the money and energy that goes into making something happen.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I have to say to folks out there that I think we've become less clear than they were in the 50s when we came up with polio and people understood that the polio vaccine was helpful. I think that research has always been important. And I think we're having less, not more of an understanding, despite all the technology, of the importance of research. I think when we were during the HIV, the ACT UP sort of period of time where we understood for the first time that it was research and it was the drugs that were being developed that now allow people to not just die from HIV, but to live with it. Research actually created the first, cancer therapies. Since 1971, we now have more people, living with cancer than dying from it when they had the big, bold act of the war on cancer. And yet, when we talk to the general public, most people don't know what we do. Now, I'm going to say that that's not the fault of the general public. It's actually the fault of us. I think as scientists, we've been so focused on creating and cutting edge innovations that we haven't taken time out to actually speak to the people in their language about what it is that we're doing. And so my whole goal at Massey is to change that approach and make sure that we're, creating cutting edge research and cutting edge science, but that we're also talking in the language of the people, because I think that to some extent, we've been talking so much to scientists and patting ourselves on the back that we forgot that if you're not talking to the regular person on the block or, up in an area, then they don't know. And if they don't know, then they can't care. What's that old saying from Theodore Roosevelt? People don't care how much you know until they know that you care. And I think that we can do a better job in showing how much we care.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's why I say the best business radio program around, because we get the best minds here coming to the program, talking to us about things that are very important. So Richmond really is I came from a college town. Shout out to Penn State, all the folks up at Happy Valley. And a lot of times big cities have brain drains. Richmond is a place that's attracting the best and the brightest. How do you attract the best and the brightest to come to Massey to further the research that you guys are doing?
Well, that's been fun. Oh my God, that's been like fun. It's almost like, when they were putting together the Boston Red Sox or the Cubs, and, all of a sudden you just get the right senior leadership and you start putting the right people on the field. We, and over this last 18 months, have done three amazing things. We've gotten the first specialized program of research excellence. That's one of the highest team science grants from the NIH. We just got awarded a Stand Up to Cancer grant, which is awarded by, bright, brilliant people. Phil Sharp, Nobel Prize winning scientist in cancers. We are doing amazing things here that's getting the attention of not only people in the region, but people nationally. The bottom line is that Massey has had a great foundation with, from the first cancer center director, Walter Lawrence, to the one that I followed, which is Dr. Gordon Ginder. They've really laid an amazing foundation. I feel guilty saying this. All I'm doing is putting the pieces together a little bit tighter. And I think as a result, our clinical trials are starting to get national attention. We have Dr. Saeed Septi, for example, and his group called Molecules to Medicine that are really creating the things that our scientists coming up with. They're trying to get that out into the clinic. And we, for the first time, have a lot of very good, talented people. But what I recognize is going back to the Fab Five, for those of you who remember.
That's true. Okay, so you're a Michigan guy, so you had to drop the Fab Five on us. Okay, we understand. They changed basketball. And what you're saying is what you guys are doing. In my lifetime, I've gone from people would not say the word cancer in public. That this person had to. I'm 62. That person had the big C, and we're past that now. That people are talking about it, and you guys are on the forefront of making things happen, bringing the best and the brightest to come to Richmond to fight what's going on.
You know what? We've had a recruiting bumper crop year in the context of recruit. We are really hell-bent on making the big C become a much smaller C. That's our goal.
Like you said, people are living with it now as opposed to back in the day. So you guys are a world-class organization, well-known, but you guys are really tied to the community. You guys are all in there supporting the community. Talk about the importance of that right there for us.
And again, I think it goes back to a little bit of what we said. W.B. Yeats said it best. He said, think like a wise man, but speak in the language of the people. The truth of the matter is, I think one of the problems that we identified early on in our conversation is the disconnect between our researchers and our scientists and our clinicians with the community. And so, growing up in a community, in my community, there was no Prince of Bel-Air when I was growing up. I mean, I didn't grow up that way, and I recognize the importance of communication. So we have made it a unapologetic, focus that we are a community-centric, community-focused cancer center where we do not actually take the mantra of bench to bedside. All that means is that you discover things and then you get them into the hospitals. We have a people to pipette movement where we really want to understand what the communities are doing, how they're living, what are some of the struggles, and we're trying to get that information to our scientists. So honestly, for the first time, we can refine our scientific questions to do what? Number one, help the community more. So no, we're out in the community 24 ways till tomorrow, trying to get the word out that this cancer center belongs to the people.
Mike King here. Dr. Winn is with us from Massey Cancer. Sir, one of the great parts about having your own radio show is you can bring experts on and ask them every question that you ever thought of. So you are on the front lines now. You're a scientist. People think that the COVID vaccine was something that was, thought up and pushed through. Can you talk about the speed of, because, hey, we don't know. All of a sudden, it's just like, hey, we have something. And people are like, I thought that would take a lot longer. Can you talk a little bit about the reality of taking something where we didn't know something and all of a sudden we have a vaccine that works?
Oh, no, this is straight up like, this is fun for me to talk about. This is almost like having Rick James be an overnight success. Rick James, overnight success. Come on, y'all. Watch the documentary. So it's the same thing with medicine. Listen, the first mRNA vaccine or the first mRNA vaccine attempt was actually back in the 80s trying to come up with something to treat HIV. It didn't work because the tools weren't there and it was kind of clunky. But back in 2003, 2004, when we really started figuring out the coronaviruses, remember this whole little thing called H1N1?
Yes.
Once we actually started thinking about that, people started getting serious about the fact that there could be corona family that needed to be addressed. And so that vaccine, as we know it today, was really had its start in the 80s. It got perfected in the 2003 era, 2004, but by 2008, with President Obama's election, he really poured gasoline on the research of getting it tighter and getting it more refined. So to be honest with you, it's almost like you were out in your backyard and you saw a tree. You say, well, it hasn't fallen over yet, but when it does fall over, I'm gonna need to get some, a chainsaw. So you go out, you buy a chainsaw, you put it in your shed. When it falls, guess what? You are already prepared. That's all they did. They took a medicine that we already had off the shelf and essentially tweaked it, like literally just a small tweak to fight COVID-19. So it is, again, the miscommunication, discommunication, and our failure. And I'll take responsibility also on our side. Our failure as scientists to come and speak clearly to the community about what was happening. So we allowed Dr. TikTok to actually start, driving a conversation as opposed to actually having real fact-based conversations about how that vaccine came about.
I think if people knew that from the get-go, it would have made a difference. So we didn't start from scratch when Corona showed up. You guys had been on it already long before that.
Not from scratch. I mean, this is like how all championship teams are made. It ain't no such thing as no overnight. I mean, when the Golden State was lighting up them points, that wasn't some overnight thing.
No.
It took
That's been in process.
It's been in process.
So a while back, we had on Elias Newjar from the Children's Hospital, and I taught them about recruiting and also the state of medicine. Now, can you tell me what's changed Massey that you would have never done before when Corona showed up? Now, all of a sudden, you're thinking part of the business model says this thing will work. And when we talked to the CEO of Elephant Insurance, he said remote working would never work. He said it wouldn't work. 2 months into it, he goes, hey, you know what? This thing might work right here. This thing might work. So is there anything over at Massey that you guys had never done before that all of a sudden Corona showed up and you said this will be part of our model going forward?
Absolutely. 3 things. The first was this issue on we need to be a better advocate for broadband. You can have all the technology in the world, but what I say, you need to have high tech and high touch. So the reality is, if you don't have broadband, the technology can't touch it. So we need to, in addition to doing telemedicine, we need to think about being better advocates for all of Virginia, and particularly for our rural areas and some of our urban served areas that are underpowered when it comes to broadband, number one. Number two, whoever thought that transportation was actually going to be a major social determinant of health that could negatively impact you? Who knew? And so it turns out that I started looking at the numbers of COVID, but then we started looking at the numbers of cancer. We have almost 10, 12 million people that could have been screened that have not been screened because not only because COVID, but because the community, because transportation issues. Turns out almost 4 to 5 million people a year get delayed therapies just simply because they can't get from point A to point B. So as a cancer center, we are now very focused in bringing together our best and brightest around this whole entire campus of figuring out how we can at least make a dent in getting people from A to B much more conveniently. And then the last thing is communication. The bottom line is we will hopefully never go back to a time where we have our scientists and our doctors creating new things without actually clearly communicating that to people. And so those three things are things that as a direct result of COVID are ways in which we're changing our business and our practice, that it really is about bringing the science to the community, and we aim to do so.
You know, when you talked about it's the communication part, I get that. It's the, the other part where we talk about getting broadband, I get that. It's the one at the transportation one, which is an age-old issue, but I don't think we think about it. You know, how do you get a person to their appointment? And sometimes it doesn't happen. The service that they're supposed to get gets delayed. So that's something, kudos to you guys and all the great things that you're doing. So I'd like to thank you for taking the time. It's my pleasure. One last time, how can people find the good folks over at Massey out there?
We have several ways of actually doing it. Our website, if you put in VCU Massey, you'll find us. Bottom line is our website is amazing. And if you can't do that, we can, get your phone numbers. But bottom line is the website is probably the best way to get in contact with us.
Ladies and gentlemen, bringing you Dr. Winn from VCU Massey. He's here. We'd like to thank Amy Lacey for helping put this thing together. Doc, appreciate your time. And you're part of the family now. Now you know where we are. When you guys got breaking news, come back and tell us. Also, shout out to you over at the Cattle Barons Ball. I had to get this part on. You were stunning in the cowboy hat. And your remarks there were well taken. They think the world of you over there. And shout out to those guys doing big things over at, the good folks from the Cattle Barons Ball. So, sir, thanks for your time. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Now, take care.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, now.